A woman calls 911 on a black man for breaking into a home. But when police arrive, they uncover a secret inside the Wi-Fi box that turns the entire neighborhood upside down. What started as a false accusation becomes a shocking twist no one saw coming. The sun hung lazily over the quiet suburban street of Willow Ridge, painting the sidewalks gold as birds chirped softly from neatly trimmed hedges. It was the kind of afternoon where nothing dramatic was supposed to happen, until the calm was shattered by a piercing, almost frantic yell. "Stop! What are you doing?" Marcus Reed jerked his head up, startled. He'd been crouched beside the small utility box on the side of his rental home, carefully reorganizing the cables that had been giving him trouble for weeks. He expected maybe a passing dog or a delivery truck, anything but the furious neighbor marching toward him like she was about to make a citizen's arrest. The woman's face was flushed with outrage, her jaw clenched, her eyes scanning Marcus like she was inspecting a crime scene. Her name was Karen Windsor, though around the neighborhood people referred to her simply as Karen, the kind of neighbor who kept binoculars by her window, just to make sure everything is safe. Marcus blinked in confusion. "I'm fixing my Wi-Fi box," he said slowly, unsure what had triggered her meltdown. But Karen wasn't buying a single word. She narrowed her eyes even further, crossing her arms tightly. "That's not your house," she snapped. "You don't live here. I've lived in this neighborhood for 20 years. I know who belongs and who doesn't, and I know when someone is." She paused for dramatic effect, lowering her voice like she had uncovered a conspiracy. "Tampering with property." Marcus stared at her, stunned. He'd moved to Willow Ridge only a month ago, drawn in by the quiet streets and friendly neighbors. Well, friendly except for this one. Before he could gather his thoughts, Karen whipped out her phone, like she'd been waiting her whole life for this moment. "I'm calling 911. "Ma'am," Marcus began carefully, "I do live here. I can show you my—" But she was already speaking breathlessly into the phone, reporting a suspicious black man trying to break into a home. His stomach dropped. He'd heard stories like this. He'd prayed he'd never be one of them. And yet here he was. While Karen loudly narrated her exaggerated version of events to the 911 dispatcher, peppering every sentence with panic she clearly didn't feel, Marcus retreated to his porch steps. He sat down slowly, forcing himself to breathe. He knew all too well that raising his voice or trying to grab the phone back would only escalate things. In situations like this, calm wasn't just a choice, it was survival. Karen paced back and forth on the sidewalk, like a self-appointed neighborhood watchdog. "I've been telling the HOA this would happen someday," she muttered loudly, making sure Marcus could hear every word. "Letting just anyone move in, you see what happens. Chaos." Marcus clenched his jaw. It took every ounce of strength not to respond. All he wanted was stable internet for his remote meetings. That's it. He had spent the last 3 nights freezing during presentations because his connection kept cutting out. Today was supposed to fix that, not turn into a nightmare. Then, just minutes later, the distant wail of sirens curled through the peaceful air. Karen's entire posture shifted, her shoulders lifted, her chin sharpened, and she folded her arms with a satisfied smirk. "See," she said, almost proudly, "they're coming for you now." But when the police cars pulled up, the officers didn't jump out aggressively or take defensive stances. Instead, they approached in a calm, seasoned manner, steps steady, faces neutral, clearly familiar with calls like this. "Sir, can we talk to you?" the older officer asked gently. Marcus stood. "Absolutely." Before he could say more, Karen rushed between them. "Officers, that man was trying to break into this home. I saw him messing with wires. They weren't his." The officers shared a silent look. A look that said, "Here we go again." "Ma'am," the younger officer replied, "we'll handle it." Turning back to Marcus, he added, "Do you have ID and proof of residency?" "Of course." Marcus walked inside, retrieved his lease, driver's license, even last month's utility bill with his name on it, and handed them over. The officers examined everything, nodded, and then addressed Karen. "Ma'am, this is his home." Karen blinked rapidly, color draining from her face. "No, that can't be right." Marcus crossed his arms lightly. Oh, it is. Would you like a tour too? But the story wasn't over, not even close. With the immediate tension settling, the officers shifted their focus to the real reason Marcus had been outside in the first place. The older officer walked over to the utility box with a curious but cautious expression. You said your internet's been cutting out, he asked. Marcus sighed. Yeah, every night for the past 2 weeks. I work from home, so it's been a nightmare. One of the officers crouched down and unlatched the small metal panel. The moment it swung open, his eyebrows shot up, so high they nearly disappeared under his hat. You didn't do this, did you? He asked, glancing over his shoulder. Confused, Marcus leaned closer. Inside, the wires were twisted into a chaotic mess, loops tangled in places they shouldn't be. And right in the center of it all sat a small black device, something Marcus had never seen before. What is that? Marcus asked, his voice tightening. The officer pointed with a gloved finger. This is a Wi-Fi siphon. Basically, someone installed it to drain your network bandwidth and use your service for free. It's definitely not standard equipment. Marcus blinked in disbelief. So, someone was stealing my internet. That's exactly what it looks like, the officer confirmed. Behind them, Karen gasped dramatically. I would never do anything like that. Marcus didn't even spare her a glance. No one said you did. The younger officer inspected deeper into the box, moving aside wires until something caught his eye. This was installed recently. Whoever did this wanted a clean connection. And then came the twist. He pulled out a tiny plastic tag taped behind the device, a technician's label, complete with a date, 3 weeks ago. Marcus's jaw dropped. Wait, I didn't schedule any repairs. All eyes turned to Karen, whose face reddened like a ripe tomato. Well, she stammered, I might have had a technician come out. My internet was slow, so I called someone. But I didn't know they'd touch anyone else's box. The officers exchanged looks. Ma'am, the older one said firmly, the technician you hired illegally tapped your service into his connection. Karen threw her hands up, flustered. I didn't know. I swear. Marcus burst into laughter, genuine and loud. So let me get this straight. You called the cops on me for fixing a problem you accidentally caused. Karen looked like she wished the earth would open up and swallow her whole. After confirming that the technician Karen hired had indeed installed the siphon illegally, the officers began documenting everything. One filled out an incident report, snapping photos of the wiring and the device, while the other jotted down statements from both Marcus and Karen. The air hung heavy with embarrassment, mostly from one side of the yard. When the officers finished, they walked over to Marcus with calm professionalism. We'll forward this report to your internet provider, the younger officer explained. They'll send someone out to replace the equipment and secure the box properly. None of this was your fault. You handled the situation exactly the right way. Marcus nodded, relieved but still shaken. He hadn't done anything wrong, yet somehow, he'd ended up at the center of a neighborhood spectacle. Then came the truly awkward moment. The older officer turned slowly toward Karen, who stood stiffly on the sidewalk like a statue trying not to crumble. Ma'am, he said firmly, this call was unnecessary and based on an incorrect assumption. You need to be more careful before accusing someone of wrongdoing, especially someone who lives here. Karen's throat bobbed as she swallowed hard. I understand, she murmured, though her voice trembled with humiliation more than remorse. Marcus looked over at her, not with anger, but with tired honesty. Look, he said, I'm not trying to start a war here. I moved here to have some peace. But you can't treat your neighbors like criminals just because you don't recognize them. Karen's jaw tightened, but she forced herself to nod. You're right, she admitted quietly. I'm sorry. It wasn't exactly the heartfelt apology Marcus had hoped for. It wasn't emotional, it wasn't warm, and it certainly wasn't graceful. But still, coming from her, it was something. For the first time all afternoon, the neighborhood felt just a little bit quieter. Over the next week, word spread through Willow Ridge faster than anyone expected. Neighbors whispered about the Wi-Fi incident in driveways, at mailboxes, and during evening dog walks. But instead of treating Marcus like an outsider, Many residents took the opportunity to finally introduce themselves properly. A middle-aged man from across the street showed up with a friendly grin and 2 cold sodas. "Man, you found the Wi-Fi thief on week 1? You're practically a hero," he joked, nudging Marcus with his elbow. Marcus laughed, but there was a subtle tightness behind it. As the days passed, he found the incident replaying in his mind more than he wanted. The fear of being misjudged, the helplessness of standing there while someone weaponized a false narrative against him. It stayed with him like a stubborn shadow. He knew he had handled it well, but the emotional weight lingered. Still, something unexpected and surprisingly positive began to emerge from the chaos. Karen, the same neighbor who had called the cops on him, humiliated herself, and practically accused him of breaking into his own home, now appeared at his door with a small woven basket. Inside were snacks, homemade cookies, and even a handwritten note apologizing for her behavior. She didn't meet his eyes at first. "I thought this might help," she said softly, almost nervously. "I'm embarrassed. Truly. I let assumptions get the best of me. I shouldn't have. Let's start over." The sincerity in her voice didn't fix everything, but it did chip away at the bitterness. Marcus accepted the basket, offering a slow but genuine nod. "Yeah," he said. "Let's start over." And for the first time since he moved into Willow Ridge, he felt something new, something warm, a sense of belonging. Maybe, just maybe, this neighborhood could become home after all. And that's how a simple attempt to fix a Wi-Fi connection turned into a neighborhood scandal, a humbling lesson, and an unexpected new beginning. Marcus didn't just clear his name. He uncovered the real problem, exposed the truth, and showed everyone the power of staying calm under pressure. Karen learned the hard way that assumptions can do real damage, but also that it's never too late to own your mistakes. And despite everything, Willow Ridge found a way to grow a little closer. If you enjoyed this story and want more dramatic real-life twists, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Thanks for watching, and remember, sometimes the biggest surprises hide in the smallest places, even a Wi-Fi box.